Nafal Pivas Tera Achas Lekolono. Wir sagt sich in Hilchestal mit Tera, dass nicht nur was gegeben geworden zu jedem, nur sie echt gegeben geworden zu jedem, nach jeder ist ihr Mechuyev zu lernen. Und lernen Gorki Pschute, nicht jetzt sein mit Lima da Tera wie Profi. Und a viele Bechole je, mich nicht jetzt mit dem Alatol, nur es muss sein, Bechol Apoch ist jemand Valailo, einmal bei jem und einmal bei Leib.
Tammuz Tafshin Lamed Dalet, I already had become a chassan, and I came to see the Rebbe for my chasana, have yechidus, etc. When I wrote in my settle to the Rebbe, I said that I wasn't entirely satisfied with what I was doing. I was working at an office, my father had another partner, I was just working on a job. Rebbe Groner had a few times asked me, was I at all interested in doing work for yeshiva? And I put to the Rebbe that maybe I would be more fulfilled and satisfied in doing that sort of work. So a very strong answer from the Rebbe was that the Ikka is the Kfir Shebenefesh. The main thing is what you really think deeply in your heart is your main priority in life. And to have Kfir sitting L'Torah, this that you can achieve in 1 hour, another person may not achieve in 24 hours. People look at you as a businessman differently from what they normally see by Kli Kodesh.
Das nicht bei Benafshe. Bemeile ist der Kolvua. Ist Alpidin, ist nicht Bottle. Wie viel soll nicht sein in Kamus? Als bei viel Alpischulchanorich ist Konner jetzt sein in sein Kvi Sitten Betero. A Miutzmane Bekamus. Im Mitzad Ruva, dass dem in a Nefen Shel Kvius, in der Dina Kolvua Lei Bottle, the Adra Bedosse Mashpia al Kol Hayim Kule.
This became my absolute guiding light the rest of my life. I have certain kvi sitting with a few chaverim that are going about 40 years already, Baruch Hashem, and they're still going strong.
The chance with verbunden mit Teile hat wieder dennoch eine Ruhigkeit, was der Rebische wird zugesagt. Als Siebach und Käsheit der Leiche wird mit Freizeit die Schmäle. Und wie rasch die Teilstadt Applaudissementen bringen wir da Teile, ist auch damals, wenn das harte Geschmächen behielten, wird der Rebische gerne alle Möglichkeiten, also sein, als Lacher.
The study time that you spoke about, like the coffee I got set aside every morning, and now only have to 2 hours. We learn too much with the Rashi every morning.
Yeah.
And children. With the rabbi. We take the time.
How long? I know. You know, I stayed at 770, right?
Und die Zeit, was gibt auf Lernen in Teile, ist in einer kurzen Zeit, ist massiv und man versteht noch tiefer und noch besser die Teile, was gelernt. It's a good thing to show an example of a successful businessman who had everyday learning periods and happy about that. Die Dame, was hat wie sieht in Batera, es hat damals in Hotel in einer kurzen Zeit, den ersten Beschluss, man sieht zu auffielen sich in seinem Misra, also seiner Misra, hat es noch dicker.
To finish work 5 o'clock. I used to take the train to Jersey City, then I took the ferry over the Hudson, and then a subway to NYU. I was busy working and in college, and I had finished college. The Rebbe just became Rebbe. I went into Yechidus. He asked me, do you have a kvias to learn Gemara like your Iyun? Wasn't so sure what the Iyun meant, but I said no. Told him the truth, no. Then he said, do you have a kvias to learn Gemara like Girsa? I wasn't so sure, but I said no. Then he looked at me and he said, do you learn Chumash and Rashi every day? Which I understood what he's talking about. I said, no. Told him the truth. The Rebbe gave me a Musa speech, but with love, with a smile, with kindness. You could hear it in his voice. When he finished, he said, Ich hoffe, als du wirst nicht kein Verribel haben, für das, was ich hab gesagt. And I looked at him straight and I said, no, ich hab nicht kein Verribel. It's your job. And when I said that, it struck him funny. He jumped up out of his seat, like he moved, his body moved, and he started to laugh.
Der was auf die Shulchan Aruch hat mehr Zeit, ist nie der Pshat, die Zeit steht in Schusse und merkt mit all, was will, nur darf das anfühlen mit Lima Datet. Und auf derich, wie das ist in Kamus, als hat die Kamus von Zman, darf das anfühlen mit Lima Datero, auf derich sehe ich die Nechus, die Nefen Lima Datero.
I said to myself, you know, the Rebbe was right. Well, what kind of a way is this? And I saw somebody in Shul, a bacher, an older bacher, who knew how to learn, and I asked him, maybe we'll make a kviyas 1 time a week. Then from once a week, it became 2 times a week, 3 times a week. And I had a chayas in it. I enjoyed it. Once on a Thursday night, the Zal was about 2 o'clock in the morning. There was nobody there, just me. And I was chazering a Fisi Gemara in Pesachim. I chazered avakol, mit alevedikait, mit achayis. And I pick up my head. I see the Rebbe standing in the doorway of the Zal. And when he saw him, I picked up my head. I saw him. Then he turned around and he went into the Mekis. But thus in stomach, he had a little nachas.
Wenn hat Yid a lichtig Leben begashmius, wenn hat der Ehre zu teilen. Und das macht ihm lichtig, also noch, als geht weg in sein Israel. Also geht weg zu seinem Job, also geht weg und setzt sich Chesed. Über sie kann haben ein lichtigen Lessen mit einer lichtigen Parnasse und kann bezahlen den Morgen und nicht missbraucht werden von allen Leben. Schwierigkeiten, setzt mit die Lichtigkeit, wenn hat ein Quiz in Beteilen in demselben Tag. Will haben heutigen Tag einen lichtigen, darf heutigen Tag haben Ehre zu teilen. Das hilft ihm aber, der Quiz sitzt bei jedem auf dem ganzen Jahr, Quiz sitzt bei Weiler auf dem ganzen Leib.
This production is made possible through the generosity of the members of the GEM Foundation.
Rosim nosi der Pirush, a Poshut, wo dosi der Pirush banagel a locha le meise, als hat nicht kinander Rumnis, kinander Beschäftigung. Nicht nur mit der Sie-Schele oder Divo-Schele oder Meise-Schele oder Kol Keches Anefe-Schele, jeder Kech, was ist sein Rumnis der Ingen Atel. Als Fall Pivas nicht von dem Sub von Terosium Nosse, dass nicht in sein Darge, bis wann es das Kongo sein, als nicht die chelische Lehre soll zukommen zu der Darge, ist aber Balabos, also zu dem Ingen, was lernt in Tere. Wie soll das Kon sein, wenn nicht wie Perikeche Chachris und Perikeche Darwis? Ich beschaße lernt unter dem Perik, das Beilbomen nicht so keine anderen Jungen, mehr nicht wie Tere. Wo das, wie sagt man, Bepeil, bekam in Jone Hode, als ist nachlich betätigt, also unter die Minuten oder die Viertelshow oder die Show, soll sich abgeben, mehr nicht mit dem ein und einzigen Linie. Und was für eine Linie soll nicht sein, kommen das bei sich Peil sein und bis in der Nähe von Kore wie Lecher hat aber nicht, mit darf nicht sein auf Druck, im Baal Madrega, Achigdela. Wer sich in der Ruf die Scheile, was sie wird aus der Rosse Nosse, aber weiß, als Rega Fardirigoi und der Rega Leachle Origoi, wird in einer Maime du Masse wie in einer ganz andere Maime du Masse, ist auch das wird verrennt wird, bis in der Nefeschel Hasbora. Aber der alte Rebbe sagt in Tanja, Jichud Zerle Meile und Nitzri. Abishas mit tut a Linie von Teilo mit Zwisser. A viele als Eder, a Minute Eder, Ton geben, Ton, wenn in der Anoches Tfilin und Hochschokola Teile Kulige Tfilin. Und nur drüber Salpitere tut Reise Tfilin. Wo der wollte sich nicht am Maniach Tfilin bepe. Aber wie bald demot das a Linie shel Yichud, werde von Lemaila Dover nichts, a Yichud nichts, wo das Eichet nicht a Hasbora, das a Ine shel Nes, adrabe das verstandig miatzme. Aber wie bald das Zman und Moche, seine Nivroi, und sie seien beschaffen geworden, zu lieb die Tachlis, und Teilo Mitzvisseo, ist auch das Gufa Eichocho, as Teilo Mitzvahs Mitzadasman seine Bembarla Mizman und Moke. Bemele wie bald als tut a Mitzvah, auf al Pi, was dafür tun in Azman Kovua, Uzman Misuyo, nicht vor dem und nicht noch dem. Und das darf sie sein al Pitelo, in der Piule, was kommt der von a Reis, mit dem Inne, was Mitzvah ist, Hecher von Zman und Moke. Der Adra bis Mann und Moke mit beschaffen geworden durch uns lieb die Mitzvah ist verstandig besichert, das muss sein, wenn beim Abend die du hast. Was ist der Begriff von dem ganzen Arichas Adibur, ist gar befasst. Als jeder hat sich sicher, Shiurim Kvuyim Beteil. Und sicher ist auch jeder nicht Stadl, auf Lehesif auf die Shiurim, וכאומר das meint man bepasst, als der niemand der Teil nimmt Shiurim Eber, weil sein in der Nähe von Terossi und Nossi, Ademo te klingt Telefon, so kommt zu gehen bei den Bese, und reden mit ihm wegen Unionem Tevium und Unionem Rizui. In dem Telefon, der interessiert mich auch nicht. Wollen sie bedürfen wie Schabes, und Chas wie schon, was ist, a Telefon klingt in Schabes, wird das immer Walbel sein. Und dem Schabesigen Tag, Chas wie schon. Wie Schabes lernen, Tere ist nicht in Welt. Ist nicht in Wochendigkeit, ist in Heiligkeit. Ist in Schabes. Klingt der Telefon, das lernt nicht war Bilbo, was mir will, der Klugenker will im Walbel sein, Kedei soll beweisen, als kluger und wird mit nicht Spol von Melch Socken und Sil endlich nicht im Telefon. Als wir reden mit ihm von Bnei Beise, was Bnei Beise das Kohl lechert wie Achas mi Yisrael, warum alle Jiden seine Sache kein Achas schlimmer, Kohl Yisrael Chaveri, darf man sie entfernen, wie Darki Neam und wie Darki Scholim, mit dem Covid Horoi, Nogu, Covid selber sein, mit allen Bewohnern, aber der Tegen von dem Mensch verliert, als sitzt der Teile, als reden mit Teile, und Teile lernen Teile. Und unter dem hat die Dvorim Ayizim in Allein, ich nossen allein, das wird angenommen, wie das wird gesagt, mit der ganzen Ernstkeit und der Tmimus und der Jescher, בסדר שבדובר נקנור מזמנית מבלבול, יבחזר, יבפלגן, נר אדרבה מזמניה פונם כמה בלבולים, כדי זו דורכפיeren, sein רוצן הטף und תרוסים נוס.
With materials from the Living Archive.
Good work. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Good luck, Rabbi.
Yes, I hear you. Thank you.
Great. So tonight I want to share with you a credible story that I had the privilege to see myself, and it goes like this. When I was studying in the yeshiva in Morristown, so every Friday I would visit Newark, New Jersey, and I would go on Broad Street and Market Street, and I would ask people if they want to put on tefillin. And there were different kinds of responses. Not everyone was happy. Some people were thrilled. Some people weren't thrilled. And then there was someone who was in a class of his own, and that was Melvin. When I ever visited Melvin, Melvin didn't even acknowledge that we existed. We would come by, we would wish him a good Shabbos, and Melvin was not impressed. So this went on for years. I was studying Yeshiva Morristown from 1994, 1994, 1996. And this happened every single week. And one week, when I walked into Moss Furniture, where Melvin worked, Melvin suddenly stops everything. And he was in the middle of a phone call. He stops the phone call and he says, "1 second, they're here. I have to hang up." We were shocked. Melvin wanted to speak to us. Why would Melvin want to talk to us? He never even acknowledged us. So Melvin told me, "Listen, my granddaughter is 3 years old and she's very sick. She has a high fever. The doctors don't know what's causing the fever." And then Melvin started choking up. And my granddaughter said, "The reason I'm sick is because God doesn't know that I'm sick. You need to have someone go to the synagogue and pray for her, and then I'll get better." So Melvin starts choking up. He says, "Look at this little girl. Look how she thinks. She thinks about God in such a real, down-to-earth way. Just if God will know that she's sick, she'll get better. Please say a mishaberach for her in the synagogue." Okay? That's what Melvin asked. That's what I did. And I was really touched because I never saw Melvin so emotional, and I could tell there was really something really, really bothering him, and it must have been a very serious situation. So I returned next Friday to Melvin's office, and I asked him what's going on, and he said, "Unfortunately, there's no good news. They tried Turkish baths and other ways to lower the fever, and it didn't really help." So I told Melvin that very often the Rebbe would tell people who had various kinds of health issues to add a mitzvah, and especially a young girl, 3 years old. She is the age when a girl should begin lighting Shabbos candles, as the Torah says that Rivka, was 3 years old when she lit Shabbos candles. So Melvin says, "Okay, let me ask my daughter." He calls up his daughter on the spot, and his daughter, in the hospital with the granddaughter, managed to light Shabbos candles that week somehow. Halachically, just parenthetically, it's good to know that when you're in the hospital, you're allowed to make a bracha on an electric light. You're allowed to light an electric light and say a bracha on it. So Melvin and I wished each other a good Shabbos, and I was really concerned about his granddaughter. I was davening every day, and Baruch Hashem, when I came back the next week, Melvin was in much better spirits, and Melvin said that his daughter told him that Baruch Hashem, they're doing the Shabbos candles, and their granddaughter is doing really well. Thank God. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to ask Melvin to put on tefillin, and I did. And Melvin said, "No, I can't do that." I said, "Why not?" So Melvin said, "Did you see what I was eating when you walked in here, Rabbi? I was eating a ham sandwich. How could I put on tefillin after eating a ham sandwich?" So I said to him, a mitzvah is like a diamond. Doesn't matter if the diamond is in the mud; it's still a diamond. The mitzvah is a mitzvah. Melvin says, "Rabbi, let me tell you my story. You said to me, Rabbi, that we should ask for a blessing from the Rebbe. Let me tell you about me and the Rebbe." I was really shocked that Melvin has a story with the Rebbe, but this is Melvin's story. Melvin's mother and father were very poor, and when they were raising their family in the United States in the, I guess it must have been in the 30s and 40s at that time, and they were having a hard time, and they didn't want to have any more children. But Melvin's great uncle, Melvin's mother's uncle, came to her in a dream and said, "You should have another child. Name him after me, name him after Melvin, our Uncle Melvin." So she told her husband about the dream, and they decided they're going to try to have another child. And sure enough, Melvin is born. So Melvin's father worked in a synagogue as a cantor, and the Rebbe himself, before the Rebbe became Rebbe, and even after the Rebbe accepted the leadership of Chabad, the Rebbe would frequent this mikveh, and the Rebbe would speak to Melvin's father. So one time when the Rebbe was speaking to Melvin's father, the Rebbe turned to Melvin and said to Melvin, "Young man, what's your name?" And Melvin says to his father, "Wow, Dad, this guy speaks English." And the Rebbe said to Melvin's father, if I remember correctly, his name was Shmuel. He says, this guy speaks English. He was so surprised. He told me that the Rebbe spoke English because he didn't look like he spoke English. He looked like one of those European rabbis just arrived off the boat, and he spoke English. And the Rebbe, he was 11 years old, and the Rebbe looks at him, and the Rebbe says to him, "Young man, not only do I speak English, I speak French and other languages as well. If you like, I could speak to you in French. I studied in the Sorbonne to be an engineer, and it's possible for a person to go to college and still remain dedicated to keeping Yiddishkeit. You should know that. That's possible." And finally, Melvin tells the Rebbe his Jewish name. His name is Menachem Mendel. So Melvin told me the Rebbe had a big kick out of the fact that they had the same name. And then the Rebbe asked Melvin, "What is your Haftorah?" Now, Melvin did not know his Haftorah because Melvin was only 11 years old. But instantly, the Rebbe makes a calculation of what the Haftarah would be. Haftarah is of this week's Parsha B'chukoisei. And Melvin proceeds to tell me the way that verse goes as he heard it from the Rebbe. Hashem is my strength and my salvation on the day of trouble. And then the Rebbe turned to Melvin's father Shmuel and said, on the day of trouble, the relative that Melvin is named after will be a good better, will be a good interceding on high, and Hashem will watch over this boychik. Hashem will watch over this child on the day of trouble. That's what the Rebbe said. So Melvin says, I'm not a religious person, but that means something to me. And every Shabbos, it's very hard for me to do my job. And he called over his boss, who was the owner of Moss Furniture and was also Jewish. And he asked his boss, how is my handwriting on Saturday? He says, it's atrocious. He says, I want to tell you, Rabbi, you know why my handwriting is bad on Saturday? Because I hear them calling me from Mount Sinai. They're telling me you gotta guard the day of the Sabbath. So I just can't write normally. That's what Melvin's telling me. So Melvin also said, interestingly, he said that on another occasion, the Rebbe was talking to his father, and the Rebbe said to his father that Hashem is a plan for each person. And just because, Rebbe said, for example, Rebbe said, just because you study to be a chazan doesn't mean you end up in Carnegie Hall. Hashem has a plan for each person, and you may study to be a chazan, but you may you won't necessarily end up in Carnegie Hall. In a similar way, the Rebbe said, I studied to be an engineer, and yet Hashem has a different plan. That's why the Rebbe became the Rebbe, even though he studied to be an engineer. So anyway, so Melvin tells me the story, and I'm really blown away by the story. The Rebbe saying such words that the God will guard this child in day of trouble, and I realize that there's a lot more that's going to happen in the story than I could possibly know. And I call up Melvin a few years later, and Melvin tells me that he quit the job over there in Moss Furniture, and since he left, he started keeping Shabbos. He always wanted to keep Shabbos, but he didn't. And when he had the chance to, he right away started keeping Shabbos. Melvin sent his children in New Jersey to Jewish schools, and I always wanted to get in touch with Melvin again after I left Yeshiva in Morristown, and for some reason I wasn't unable to find him. I tried all kinds of Lexus, and names, and I couldn't find him. But somehow, after the tragedy happened in Poway, on the way back from Poway, after the end of the Shiva of Lori Kay, so I just felt this just inspiration. I have to find Melvin. And I did. I found Melvin's grandson through social media, and I got in touch with Melvin's son. And he told me an amazing thing that happened to him and his son. I couldn't believe this. This is what happened. Melvin, as I mentioned, started keeping Shabbos, but far more than that happened. Melvin's son, who had gone to a Jewish school and a Jewish high school, didn't really care about religion that much. It didn't mean that much to him, and he didn't keep it. And he got married to a Jewish woman and had Jewish children, but he wasn't putting on tefillin, wasn't keeping any of the halacha until the following happened. He was invited to a bar mitzvah, and he took his son to the bar mitzvah, and he puts on that tefillin. And his son sees him with a tefillin. He says, "Dad, what are you doing?" And he tells his son, "My son, you know what this is? This is called tefillin. When you turn 13 years old, you're going to get one of these too. I'm going to buy one for you. When you're 13 years old, you get a pair of tefillin too." That's what he told his son. But as he's saying this to his son, he's thinking to himself, why in the world would I buy him a pair of tefillin? It's a waste of money. He's not going to use it. I don't use it. Why would he start using it if I don't use it? On the other hand, this is a Jewish cup. He said, on the other hand, what kind of father wouldn't buy his son a pair of tefillin for his bar mitzvah? So what is he going to do? So what he did was, true story, he started putting on film every day just so he could justify why he's going to buy his son a pair of tefillin for his bar mitzvah, because that's what he does too. so he started putting on tefillin every single day for weeks. But it meant nothing to him, and he was bothered, and he wrote an email to Chabad.org, asking them, saying, "I'm doing this tefillin thing a couple of weeks. It means nothing to me. Can you help me?" So whoever takes care of the Ask the Rabbi section in Chabad.org sends back an email. You know what you need to do? You need to study Tanya. All right. So he goes to a bookstore, he gets a Tanya, starts studying Tanya, he doesn't understand it so much, he starts emailing back and forth Chabad.org. And they say to him, you know what you need to do? You need to go to your local Chabad center and go to your local Chabad center, and there you will be able to ask the rabbi. And he was very shy, he didn't really want to go, but eventually he just walked in there, and he suddenly felt so at home in this Chabad house like he never felt at home before in his life. Mm-hmm. And he never left. And he became a chassid, and his son became mamish. He and his son, his family, all are very connected to Yiddishkeit and Chassidus. And as the Rebbe said, on the day of trouble, Hashem will watch over the Baichik, not just only the Baichik, but also over his family. Anyways, Melvin, I think it was his 80th birthday 2 years ago. I think Melvin's 82, and gesund und stark, Tobias and Mashiach. And any questions or comments before we wish each other a good vach? All right. Good vach, David Issaver. I miss you. You haven't joined us a couple of weeks. Good vach, Yehuda. Good vach, Rebel. Good vach, Yosef. Sorot Avot, Tatzach Rab. Good vach.
Good luck, Rob.
Thank you very much.